And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Syracuse sports fans of all ages. It is a live Thursday edition of Syracuse Sports. My name is Brent Axe. Chris Carlson is here once again. Chris, happy Thursday. Happy April. We've made it to April already. I can hear the faint piano in the distance. Jim Nance whispering at me. Augusta beckons, and I'll get that itch to go dig out the golf clubs and hit the driving range and get this thing going here. It's warm enough to golf in Syracuse today. Unfortunately, it's a little wet out there, so diehards only, mutters only out there today.
Yeah, my game is the same regardless of the course conditions. Horrific. So I would be completely unimpacted by all of it.
We got some fun things to talk about with you guys here today. As you see it on your screen, our Syracuse Sports Insiders have the direct line to us to give us your comments and questions on all manner of Syracuse sports. We got some good stuff from our insiders we'll get into. They've been feeding us some great questions and things to ask Syracuse football coaches and players as we are in the heart of spring practice. The spring game is next Saturday at the JMA Wireless Dome, so we'll get into some interesting spring football headlines, including the youth movement that seems to be taking over this team. We've got a couple Syracuse basketball topics to get into. Carmelo Anthony's having a great week. Hard to top the week he's having, and it's only Thursday, so we'll see what else comes along the way here for Carmelo. We're going to have to ask Memorial Day Chris to come out for this edition of Syracuse Sports. Big lacrosse game on Saturday that they're trying to set a record for. So we'll tell you about that if you're not aware of what they're trying to do at the Dome. And in this case, I would actually encourage you to follow the lead of what Syracuse is trying to set here. But Chris, let's start here. It's still portal season, right? The portal's been open since last Monday. Syracuse has made some gains there. So let's talk about first what they have, and then we'll get into the big elephant in the room of what they still really need, right? There is one big fish that they are trying to get out of that pond, but certainly went out and got some needed positions. William Kyle, the center from UCLA, who is somebody who kind of fell out of the rotation at UCLA last year. He had an injury that kind of kept him behind, and you have to be careful of highlight reels, but he can jump out of the gym. He can block shots. He can attack the rim. He's 6'9". I don't think he's your starting center. I think he's a depth piece at center, and that's a position Syracuse is still looking for. But I think a nice addition out of the portal. And it's always good, Chris, when you can grab a 44% three-point shooter out of the portal. That's Nathan Kings of Oregon State, who comes in. And again, is he going to start? What kind of role is he going to play? You figure out all this stuff later. When you can get a 44% three-point shooter to come in and help Syracuse in a category they desperately need, two nice additions out of the portal. They're getting there, right? We'll get to the big position they still need, but we're starting to see some movement here in Syracuse adding some pieces that they really needed.
Yeah, both sort of shore up weaknesses from last year, right? Where it's like, all right, we need to fix this lack of athleticism at center. Well, you certainly did that. He's not going to be a throw it in the post guy and make something happen for you. He's pretty much a dunk. He'll stand at the dunk spot and finish, and that's what he's going to do offensively. But defensively, he's going to give a lot more. And then Nathan Kings, we talked about shooting. He is that, but he, we both think, I think that, he's more than Chris Bell, right? Yeah. Chris Bell is stand in the corner and shoot at a high clip. Nathan King seems to have more to his game. Seems like he was one of the better defenders on his team. So is more of a well-rounded player where you're not, it's not a trade-off where it's like, okay, if I put the shooter on, like our defense is going to be terrible, right? You have a chance of having a more well-rounded basketball team. So two good pickups that seem to fit, but do not answer the big two, certainly not the big question and probably not the big two questions, I think.
6'5" guard in Nathan Kings too, which I think it has to fall in line with what Syracuse is looking at point guard, which is the big fish, and they still need another center, right?
Well, I was going to say, I think it would be tough for them to play Nathan Kings and JJ Starling, right? We saw, I know Nathan Kings is a shooting guard / small forward, but we saw what happened when they tried to make JJ the primary ball handler and the only ball handler last year. And it wasn't great, right? It wasn't great. So, he seems like more of a small forward for the most part to me than a big shooting guard.
Yeah, that's true. They could certainly put him there. And you have JJ coming back, but the big thing here is they need a point guard. That's still out there. I would imagine that is now Donnie Freeman might end up being the player they pay the most. So you technically, he never went in the portal, but I guess everybody's in the portal after the year. So they retained.
Your agent,
yes,
your agent is generally shopping you around. So you are engaging in pre-portal negotiations, I think.
Correct. Yes. So technically not in the portal, but I think we all know they did have to retain him with a better offer, and it appears that they did. So he might end up being the guy you pay the most. But the portal acquisition that Syracuse needs to go in on here is at point guard. And we'd like to thank Mike Waters for this. I always enjoy it when somebody does the work for us in this case, right? So everybody's been asking about point guard, Chris. There's a lot of names out there, but there's a few in particular, and Mike's got some good ones on his list here, and I'm going to miss a few. We could spend all day doing this, right? You look in the portal, you look in the rankings, there's a bunch of point guards in there, but Mike came up with a good list here, so I just wanted to go over it quickly. We heard today, by the way, that Nathan George out of Georgia Tech is somebody that Syracuse has contacted, right? They are in the game there. Now, how much contact, how far down the list will they go in terms of, will they make the final four? Will they make the final two? Like, are they just, circling around this guy, or are they serious?
And is he their top guy, right? Like, they're
right.
probably contacting like 4 or 5 names, right?
But good that they're in on him. He's a 6'3" guard, and the big thing about him, Chris, is he led the ACC in assists last year. 6.5 assists per game. He averaged 12 points, just over 4 rebounds. He's a Toronto native, so I don't know if coming back closer to home is something he's considering there, but I think that would be a significant pickup for Syracuse. Jaden Pierre out of Providence, a guy that, as Mike puts it here, went through the Big East Wars, 3 years there. He started 53 games. He's 6'2", averaged 12 points and 3.5 assists. He also made 35% of his threes. He's from New Jersey. He actually went to the same high school that Carmelo Anthony goes to, Long Island Lutheran. Nick Boyd out of San Diego State. He's considered one of the top point guards in the portal, 6'3" grad student who's getting an extra year due to COVID and a medical red shirt as well. He's from Garnerville, New York. So there's a common theme here, Chris. A lot of these guys are players that would be coming closer to home from where they were at this point. This past year, 13 points, 35% three-point shooter, had 121 assists to just 55 turnovers. So a terrific assist to turnover ratio there. Apparently Wisconsin's going after him pretty hard, but I thought I'd throw his name out there. Malachi Smith at Dayton and Kumari Peterson at East Tennessee State, 2 other players that Mike mentions there. So there's a good running list of some of the better point guards that are out there, some that have connections, some that Syracuse has contacted. And I think that's the home run people are looking for, Chris. That name that grabs you and you say, okay, that's what they needed to do, and sends the message that not only they got a quality player, but in what I think would be the case, spend some money on. Put the money on the table, said, this is our guy, and we're going to go in on him. That's what they're still looking for, and they're looking for at that position.
And it's going to tell us a lot about how they're going to play, right? Like if it's a pure point guard, okay, we're going to have J.J. Starling as more of a 2. Or if it's, sort of the multiple combo guard, you're going to play the matchups and sort of, it'll depend on the night how you're going to go on offense. And, it helps that they can sort of go either way on that, right? JJ is capable of being a co-point guard. I think you probably don't want him to be the primary guy, but so both those options are available to them, which is good. It gives them a little bit of, a little bit more versatility, a little more flexibility in who they go after.
Yeah, that's why I'm hoping of all those names we just mentioned there, I think George would probably go to the top of my list because I like the assist numbers. You bring in somebody who can command a team right away. And I remember seeing him at Georgia Tech, was impressed with him, and it's somebody you'd have to pay for. I mean, if he's moving in conference, pretty good gig there at Georgia Tech, wants an upgrade in terms of playing time, position, money, and everything, you got to go in on him. And the other day, Chris, I'm just looking it up here. Yeah, Deedon Thomas from UNLV is considered one of the top guards in the portal. He gets snagged by LSU. The other teams in the mix were Kentucky and Florida. So you had 3 SEC teams. By the way, LSU was not one of the rare teams that was not in on the game, wasn't spending big money, is trying to crawl out of a sub 500 hole themselves like Syracuse is. So just add another SEC team to the list that's throwing big money out there. Everybody has their reasons why they go one way or the other, but Syracuse was pretty involved with him. They made the Final Four with him, and you kind of cut through the fat here, and it looks like LSU just probably outspent Syracuse in that case, right? But good news that they made the Final Four there and made a Final Four with 3 other SEC teams that are throwing a lot of money out there. So they didn't get him, but if they can get one of the names we mentioned, and I'm sure everybody's got their favorite target out there, now you're in business, right? Because you look around, Chris, there's a team that is clearly winning the portal in the ACC, and that is Louisville. Louisville has brought in Isaac McNeely from Virginia, Ryan Conwell from Xavier, and Adrian Woolley from Kennesaw State, who combined to make 273 threes last season. Louisville's got a big budget. They're bringing in a lot of scorers, a lot of three-point shooters, and a lot of perimeter guys.
And you sort of knew, the NIL game suits Louisville, right? It's a town that has a lot of money around it. They take their sports seriously. The fact that they have a rival that also pushes them and just sort of pushes everybody to up the ante, I think helps a little bit. You can't be seen as spending less or substantially less than Kentucky and satisfy your fan base. Kelsey won. He won last year with a now he coached a lot of those guys previously.
Right.
He brought guys with him, but he showed I can pull it together in a year out of the portal.
And a team that just 5 minutes ago was at the very depths of the ACC and now is at the top of the league in terms of spending and has turned that thing around quickly, which you can do in the portal era. So we will continue to keep an eye on that. Go read Mike's story. He's got some great info and more names to add to the list of even the guys that I mentioned, and that will be the seismic moment, if you will, in the portal when Syracuse lands its point guard, and we will go from there. Hard to have a better week than Carmelo Anthony, Chris. He's named the commencement speaker for Syracuse in the class of 2025, so looking forward to hearing Melo's message next month at graduation, and found out this week that he will, in fact, be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. So we'll hear about all that to come here, and looking forward to seeing who introduces him in Springfield. I would put my money on Jim Boeheim, but you never know. Could be some other influences in Melo's life. He'll want to introduce him at the Basketball Hall of Fame. But, Chris, if I give you $50 of my money, well, you got to put it on Boeheim, right?
Yeah, he sort of fits. He was there for all of, the 4 moments where Carmelo won big, the national title and the gold medal. And the gold medals in the Olympics that sort of paint Carmelo as a winner. Jim was there either as the head coach or the assistant coach, obviously with the Olympic team. I think, he's certainly the odds-on favorite. The only other person I can think of that makes sense from what I know and who has Syracuse connection, Troy Weaver wouldn't be a bad pick. He
good choice.
He was an assistant on the national championship team. Carmelo came here because of, or at least in part because of the relationship they had. He saw how Carmelo grew up. He knew him when he was young and in Baltimore. So in terms of telling the Carmelo Anthony story, and obviously Troy is also a very respected, has had a career in basketball. And if it's not one of those two, it's going to be somebody sort of, off our radar. It was probably an NBA connection that's sort of outside the Syracuse bubble,
he came into the league with Dwayne Wade. They're good friends. Went through
LeBron.
LeBron.
Could it be LeBron?
Be. Wouldn't be stunned. They're very close. There was another name that popped in my head there. It'll come back to me. But if I was putting money on it, I'd say Boeheim. But something to keep an eye on. I have no argument with this. He is clearly a first ballot Hall of Famer. Remember, this is the Basketball Hall of Fame. It is not the College Basketball Hall of Fame. It is not the NBA Hall of Fame. This encapsulates everything you've done in the sport. He's the most successful American basketball player in terms of gold medals and international play, national championship, one of the best one-and-done stories in the history of the college game, and a top 10 scorer in the history of the NBA. So there is no dispute. There is no argument about whether Carmelo is a Hall of Famer. I was thinking about this, though, Chris. Trae Young has thrown his hat in the ring as an assistant GM with a $1 million donation to boot. Steph Curry is doing the same thing. You look at Andrew Luck, who comes into Stanford as the GM, fires the coach, brings in his guy, Frank Reich. Now, that's only for 1 year, but there's a GM who's actually got some
power.
sway. It's power. Yeah, I didn't know GMs could do that, right? So the question has been posed to me, and I thought we would put it out there. With Melo having such a big influence now, with Kiyan coming in and everything, it's all things Melo again, right? Should Syracuse go down that road and name an assistant GM that's a name that has connections, and I guess we would anticipate would throw a little money in the ring as well. Not that Carmelo hasn't to this point. He has donated plenty of money to Syracuse and literally is giving you his firstborn child to come in and play basketball here. But I like that idea. And if it's not Melo, and we could debate a bunch of names out there, there's a lot of former Orange that are ever present in the media and I think would be good at this. But I guess the better question is, why not? Why wouldn't you do this in an era where you're doing everything you can to gain more attention and gain an edge in the NIL game?
I like the idea, and obviously, right, from a branding perspective, having him talking to recruits would be great. Having his money, of course, would be great. Having him around the program more would be great. The only question is you'd have to be pretty comfortable in terms of like how much say-so he's, his kid's on the team, right? Like if he gets that position, is he deciding how much money everybody's making? Is he deciding sort of team philosophy and how they're building and who's going to be their number one scoring option? Or is he sort of good just like letting somebody else make those choices and he's just along for the ride? You'd have to have those conversations, I think, ahead of time and feel comfortable that the relationship would work out.
I would be comfortable with it because it's an assistant GM. It's a title, but you have a voice, right? This is not just somebody you're calling and getting advice from. He's essentially on the payroll, right? He feels like he's part of it, but it's not a full-time gig. It's not like you're out there grinding tape and going to all these tournaments. And if he wants to, he certainly can. He has been on the circuit, of course, with Kiyan being there. But I just like the idea of Carmelo having that kind of involvement. I mean, look, his ever-present, his name's on the facility. He's the most prominent Syracuse basketball alum out there by far at this point. There's already a lot they get there, just by association. But he's taking on a more official role in the sport. Remember, he's going to be an analyst on NBC coming up next year with their NBC is taking over part of the NBA package. He's got a lot of skin in the game already in the sport, Hall of Fame as a player, but now taking on more of a, for lack of a better term, an executive role, an overseeing role, and a voice in the sport. Because he's the assistant GM, I think you've got to value that.
Yeah, I think you're right. As you're saying this, I'm like, he doesn't have time to micromanage anyway. He's got enough going on.
But you're still giving him enough of a say and a voice of what should we do about this? Ask him those things. Hey, we're trying to get this guy. What have you heard about him? You've been on the circuit. What do you just giving? And so many alums out there have tried to find a way in this NIL era to have more of a say and an influence, but maybe not have to cut that $2, $3, $4 million check. Because that's what you need. You just need the money. But I don't know. That's my long-winded way of saying, why wouldn't you do this? If it's not Melo, you've got a lot of guys out there that I think would raise their hand and would want to do this. I think Etan Thomas would be smart. I think Devo would be somebody you'd want associated with this program in one way or the other.
Carmelo's the
guy.
He's the guy that moves the needle nationally.
Yeah,
right. Like
exactly.
I respect the basketball acumen of all the other guys, but Carmelo's the one who, if you introduce a recruit to, his eyes are bugging out.
On to football, Chris. We've been at camp. We've been at the spring practices here as they continue to roll along here towards the spring game next Saturday. Syracuse actually had a scrimmage yesterday, and I think they're closing in on a number of things people are asking about here. Fran Brown saying earlier this week, we're going to know, in his words, quote, real soon who the quarterback is. I think it's Ricky Collins, but we'll get that official declaration, it would seem, at some point before spring camp ends. But another guy that has generated a ton of buzz is Demetrius Samuel Jr., who is going to go two ways at 17 years old. Who just turned 17 yesterday, so happy birthday,
we can't say he's 16 anymore.
I know.
It was so fun when he was 16.
It was such a eye-popping, holy crap, what are you talking about type of headline. Yeah, 16 years old on a college football team, but now 17, which is still pretty eye-popping if you ask
It's
me.
still, yeah, yeah.
It's still very interesting. So he spoke yesterday, and when you're getting podium status at spring practice, you're in demand, and a lot of people do want to talk to you. But people have asked some pretty intriguing questions about him, Chris. Like, what kind of classes is he taking? What was the process for a 16-year-old to get on a college football roster? I know you've been looking into that a little bit.
I talked to him a little bit yesterday. Just like, I don't know how you reclassify in high school, like something I never thought about. But he said his parents had him taking high school classes when he was in middle school. So he sort of came into high school with some high school credits, and then he took some like AP classes, some college level classes when he was in high school, and that's what sort of enabled him to sort of jump up a year and a half in terms of like, when he would be expected to be on a college campus. Was always a good math student, was always a good sort of history student. And he's planning to study business with a minor in construction at Syracuse. He wants to run his own construction company someday.
Okay.
So that is not one of those majors that, the majority of the athletes sort of take, where it's sort of like, all right, you're majoring in football and, you're taking the easiest, the path of least resistance. It's not one of those path of least resistance majors. Comes across really bright and really intelligent. So, he's going to be a great story. I mean, he's going to be a great story. I was looking up today, right as we were talking, it's like, okay, Fran thinks he's going to be the starting cornerback. Caleb Singleton, another freshman, is getting reps with the first and second team right now. He's going back and forth. So you could have two freshmen starting cornerbacks next year for Syracuse. And would this be a good thing or a bad thing if that's what you are heading into next year with?
It'd be a challenge considering of the I brought this up before and I'll reiterate it again. You guys know this. There's a lot of good quarterbacks on the schedule, but the other day, Adam Rittenberg from ESPN did a ranking of the top 15 quarterbacks coming back to college football next year, and Syracuse is going to face 6 of them, right? There are some really good quarterbacks on the schedule, and if I'm a quarterback, especially one that's been around the block a few times, has some talent, and I see 2 freshman corners out there, you are going to challenge freshman corners. Demetrius Samuel, Fran Brown said it earlier this week, is going to be here for 3 years. Right? At 17, indicating that the minute he becomes NFL eligible, he is an NFL level talent. I'm not doubting that Caleb has that kind of talent or anybody want to put out there. But one thing that Fran brought up this week, Chris, it was kind of the first time he leaned into it a little bit. There is a bit of a youth movement on this team. And there's a lot of guys that have to step into bigger roles, not only as freshmen, but as younger players stepping in for Marlowe Wax, Justin Barron, LaQuint Allen, all these guys, Jackson Meeks, and these veterans that Fidel Diggs that are going into, in many cases, the NFL and will get drafted or will be at NFL camps over the summer. So it's an intriguing story, but it also shows you the faith that Fran has in the process of recruiting. They still have one of the bigger recruiting classes in the country. It's still something they believe in. Even in the transfer portal era in football, you need it, of course, with the depth that's out there. In basketball, you can pull a Rick Pitino and say, I'm not even recruiting freshmen anymore. You have to in football. But, man, opening day, Tennessee college football playoff team with one of those quarterbacks I mentioned, and he's going to throw against 2 potential freshman cornerbacks starting out there. I appreciate the faith and I appreciate the talent that you're bringing in there, but they're still freshmen. That's wow. That is something to watch. And between those guys, Antoine Delorier at linebacker, who I think is going to get in, how do you ignore big Byron Washington on that offensive line? It's 6'8", 380. You got to find a role for him. And a few other freshmen that I think could be knocking on the door here. There's a lot of guys that have to make that jump to the college game quickly, who are not 17 years old, by the way, let alone the 17-year-old phenom we're talking about.
And there are older guys, nobody really old at corner, but Davion Kerr, one who played last year, and then his twin brother are options at corner. Greg Delane is sort of their most experienced guy coming back. He's a redshirt junior. So, not fait accompli that we're going to have 2 freshman starters, but certainly a chance that 2 of those guys are contributing right away. I thought I was going to be more concerned about this than I was, actually. I was looking up freshman cornerbacks that played last year and, thinking like, boy, there aren't going to be many. And if there are, they're not going to be on great teams. But Leonard Moore of Notre Dame played 542 snaps, had a PFF rating of 84.7. That's better than anybody Syracuse had last year. Cameron Calhoun at Utah did the same thing as a true freshman, better than anybody Syracuse had last year. Now, he also transferred to Alabama after the year, which is a whole other down the road conversation, given how good these guys are. But Texas A&M started a true freshman cornerback. Oklahoma did, Tennessee, and they were all pretty successful. So it is one of those positions where you can do it right away. So I'm more optimistic than I actually thought I was going to be coming into this conversation about, that it doesn't mean anything negative right away.
And they do have one of the better secondary coaches in the country coaching them in Fran Brown, Joe Schaefer. And there's been kind of a secret weapon out there, Chris, that at some point I want to write about this, but we need to note it. So Syracuse brought in Kevin Coyle as a quality control. No, I want to get his title right. It's not quality control, but they have added Kevin Coyle to the defensive coaching staff. This is a guy who was, by the way, a defensive coordinator under Paul Pasqualoni at Syracuse from 1991 to 93. So his first defensive coordinator. He has coached secondary in the National Football League with Cincinnati. He was recently, let me just bring it up here. So Kevin Coyle, I want to get his title right, is a senior analyst on defense, right? And I've seen him work with the secondary a lot out there. But when you look at his resume, it is pretty impressive. And it is somebody who brings a lot of experience to the table to help out. Not that Fran Brown, I mentioned he has the reputation as one of the better secondary coaches, but Joe Schaefer and Fran are on the younger side. Coyle's been around the block a few times here, so you're getting that perspective. Will Muschamp has been at camp this week. Somebody that Fran has talked about a number of times, he's looked up to, has had a great relationship with. So you just adding in all these names and this experience, that's only going to help a young group maybe kind of hasten that learning curve and that they need to go out there and be game ready.
Yeah. But, he will be, when we're talking about guys that ACC Network highlights, guys that have a chance to make, national headlines, like he's that for Syracuse, the two-way guy coming off Travis Hunter's Heisman season. He's going to be a fun story for his 3 years on campus.
3 years. But if it works, recruits equal recruits. If they're seeing this story that this guy got on the field, he went 2 ways, it's only going to equal more of those talented freshmen. Syracuse has been on a lot more of those radars in the last year and a half. You're only going to get on more if they see that he came in and hit the ground running and was successful. All right,
Chris. And credit to Fran for not being afraid of it, right? Like, there are a lot of coaches at Syracuse, I think, that would have slow played it and oh, he's only 16, who knows? Like, that is not what we're getting.
No, he said he's in line to start at cornerback. You don't hear coaches say that in spring ball, right? Especially about a 17-year-old player.
About anybody.
He was pretty honest about how he's standing out. And I brought this up before, but it's worth reiterating. Everybody I've asked about Samuel, they do this thing where they kind of pause for a minute and they smile and they look at you and they're like, have you seen this kid? Or it's always something interesting, right? Like we were talking to Michael Johnson Jr. the other night, and I asked him about Demetrius, and he looks at me and goes, do you know how old that kid is? Right? Just like everybody is in awe of what he's doing out there. And hey, he has earned the respect of the team like that. So it's going to be something to watch here, not only over the rest of camp, but in the fall when things really get going. We got some great questions and comments from our Syracuse Sports Insiders that I want to get to in a minute here, Chris. But I just wanted to spend just a couple minutes here with Memorial Day Chris, okay?
Oh, yeah, he needs help. Catch him up.
Memorial Day Chris. There is a huge lacrosse game at the Dome on Saturday. Number 5 Notre Dame, number 7 Syracuse. Syracuse, if they are truly back, if this is a program that is going to contend for a Final Four and maybe even a national championship, then these are the games you need to win. Notre Dame is the back-to-back defending national champion. Now, Notre Dame is not on the level they were the past couple of years, but they're still pretty darn good. They still have Chris Kavanaugh. They still have. Now, I wanted to bring this up because this game is a statistical dead heat. The Syracuse men's lacrosse Twitter feed actually put this out here. I just want to read a couple of stats to you about this game, okay? Scoring offense. Syracuse averages 15 goals a game. That's sixth in the country. Notre Dame averages just over 15.5 goals per game. That's third in the country. Two top six offenses. Scoring defenses are both in the top 10. Both have top 15 man-up offenses. Both top 8 in the country in face-offs, and both are two teams in the lacrosse world that clear the ball well, meaning that this is going to be an up-and-down game. Joey Spallina is one of the leading scorers in the country. He averages just over 5 points per game, which is fifth in the country. Chris Kavanaugh is ninth. John Mullen is sixth in the country in faceoffs. Will Lynch is seventh. The goaltender, Jimmy McCool, has a save percentage that is seventh in the country. Their goaltender is eighth in the country. And I need to remind people, their new goaltender, is replacing Liam Entenmann, who is one of the greatest college goalies of all time. Okay. So what I'm telling you is, if you're not doing anything Saturday and you're in Syracuse, New York, I would highly recommend you go to this game. This could be one of the more entertaining college lacrosse games of the year. And again, it's a real prove-it moment for this team, Chris, because they've lost 6 in a row to Notre Dame. And if you're going to step over that hump and prove that Syracuse lacrosse is back in the national conversation, these are the games you got to win, and these are the teams you got to beat.
This is the game that Memorial Day Chris promised to watch, so he will have thoughts, very uneducated thoughts, but he will have thoughts next week.
By the way, you know what your reward is if you beat Notre Dame on Saturday? How about number 1 Cornell next Saturday? Okay. The proverbial favorite to win the national championship this year. And see, here's what I'm wondering about, Chris, because Notre Dame has this guy and Cornell has this guy. Notre Dame's got Chris Kavanaugh, who at any time can just take over a game. Cornell's got C.J. Kirst, who is the best player in the country. He's going to be the number 1 pick in the PLL draft. The PLL is the Premier Lacrosse League, the pro league in lacrosse. Does Syracuse have that guy? Now, but in theory, it's Joey Spallina. Spallina is not the type of dominant player that C.J. Kirst is or Chris Kavanaugh is. He does it in his own way, right? Syracuse is doing it more by committee, more by other players contributing. But when you boil it down, if you're going to win a national championship, you just need somebody you can point to and say, take over the darn game. Notre Dame has that. Cornell has that. I'm still wondering if Syracuse has that. And we'll start to see that certainly in the next 2 weeks against these two teams.
Sounds like they need to take the conversation full circle. It sounds like they need their Carmelo Anthony.
Yes, they do. There you go. So looking forward to Memorial Day, Chris, being around for this one. But they're trying to set an attendance record for this game. The highest attended college lacrosse game this year, I believe, was just over 10,000. They cited it on the SU site. I'll have to look it up. But I'm telling you guys, if you're around Saturday looking for something to do, it's going to be a back and forth, exciting, high-scoring lacrosse game, and we'll see if Syracuse can get out there and prove, like, yeah, we're back. We're among the big boys here, and then go play the number 1 team in the country next week on Long Island. So there you go. A couple minutes on lacrosse. Big one coming up Saturday. I'm really looking forward to this game. It should be a lot of fun to watch. To our Syracuse Sports Insiders, some great questions from these guys today. You guys are bringing it, man. Chris, I love what-ifs. I love alternate history. What if this happened or didn't happen? And we got a good one today from Dave J., who says, I have a what-if question for you guys that I've been mulling over since I heard the news about Carmelo doing commencement and being elected to the Hall of Fame. His question is this. How do you think Syracuse would do if Keith Smart had missed and Hakeem Warwick had missed in the SU title game against Kansas? Do you think that Syracuse would have more titles? So essentially, Keith Smart misses. Syracuse beats Indiana in 87. But Hakeem Warwick misses the block, And we don't have the story of Carmelo Anthony and a national champion. We just have the story of Carmelo Anthony leading Syracuse to the Final Four. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. Now, you tilt Keith Smart's shot away. Remember, Syracuse still makes a Final Four in 96. Winning that championship in 87, is there a player or somebody that comes along to Syracuse that maybe wouldn't have? I mean, you're still in the national championship game. You have the high profile of the Final Four. They had tons of players follow after 87, Chris. Think of, Sherman Douglas and Billy Owens and Derek Coleman, who was on that team, of course, but the guys that went on to NBA prominence that led to the next round of recruiting, right? They were still there. I don't think you lose any of those guys or gain somebody that was thinking of coming here if you win the championship. By virtue of being in that Final Four, in that championship game, you still had that high profile. I think people, and again, in the what-if department, like, do you trade the 87 title for 2003? I think it all kind of came together in 03, and everybody got the satisfaction out of it that they needed there. But I don't know. I don't think so. I think the course of history kind of stays the same, Chris. Like, look in 2010. Had they not had a big injury on that team, right? That team could have won the national championship. That 2012 team was a bad officiated game against Ohio State away from going further in that tournament, right? You could what if it to death, but I don't know. I don't know if the course of history changes if you alter those shots.
And you'd certainly have, it is interesting, like Carmelo's personal history would be really interesting. Like, he'd still be a very good basketball player and a very good scorer in the NBA. But like, that really is his like crowning individual achievement. Like, when you look at like, can he win? Like, is he a winning player? Like, that is the moment you sort of look at where it's like, yeah, he is. Like, I get that it didn't happen for him on the NBA level. But like the Olympic teams, those teams are so talented, they're going to win regardless. That NCAA team was like, to some degree, I think, like, I don't know, you score a lot of points, you're in this era, you're a superstar in the NBA, but like it changed his resume considerably.
Great what-if question there from Dave. Our guy Rockin' Ron had a question for us. What offensive position do you feel suits Demetrius Samuel the best? It's got to be wide receiver, right?
He's going to play
on the edge.
Better be good at it.
Put him on the edge. Throw it deep, baby. Take advantage of the speed and the talent that's there. Thomas T just wanted to chime in on this. So, Chris, I put out a comment from Pete Prisco of CBS.
Wow.
Okay, if you guys missed this, I'll pull it up for you real quick. So Pete Prisco, CBS, tweeted this today. The quarterback I heard a lot of good buzz about at the league meetings, and a guy I really like, is Kyle McCord from Syracuse. Teams like him, a lot more than draft analysts. So my guy Thomas says, I have a feeling McCord will be a first-rounder. I don't know if it just feels like it. Yeah, I friggin' love the guy, but that's beside the point. I don't know about first round, Chris, but I heartily agree with Pete Prisco. I think a lot of teams are higher on Kyle McCord than draft analysts, and McCord's going a lot higher than some of these draft gurus think he's going to go. I think he's a second-round pick. Would it stun me if he slipped in the first round? No, but I've got him locked in the second round at this point.
Quarterbacks do get pushed up in the draft. Teams, want to get their guy and give their fans hope. And, I have said a lot of, I don't know that I can come up with any more nice things to say about Kyle that I haven't said over the past 4 months in terms
Cam
of
Ward goes first. Shador goes third overall, but second quarterback, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think what could throw this whole thing off is if New Orleans takes Jackson Dart at 9.
Sure.
Which would not stun me. There's always a trade no one sees coming. Yep. You get an itchy trigger finger. I need a quarterback. You trade in. Okay, now everybody just bumps up the list. And McCord, by all measures, is the 4th or 5th best quarterback, and you can haggle about where he is on the list. So that just moves him up.
We both say 4.
I think he's at the very least the 4th best, and I wholeheartedly agree with Pete. So we're getting there, man. Draft's only about 20 days away. We're going to start to get into silly season here a little bit, but I don't think Pete Prisco's feeling silly about that. I think he's right. And one more question here from our Syracuse Sports Insiders. JR wants to know, as far as the linebackers go, do you sense they are pleased with the depth, or could they go into the portal looking for an impact player? I mean, you always keep an eye on the portal, Chris, but I think the linebackers are just different. You don't have a Marlowe Wax, right? Derek McDonald's your leader. He's a productive guy, can rush the passer. He's the leader of that group. Sparrow is back, which I think was a huge addition in a sense that he did not, it wasn't a subtraction, let's put it that way. He came back out of the portal to come back into that unit. Young Antoine Delorier, who I talked to yesterday, Chris, and was in awe of his physique, is somebody who's, boy, my man's eating his Wheaties, that's for sure. I think he gets on the field. So I just think it is, and this sounds bad, but don't take it the wrong way. I just feel like linebackers are more committee. There's just more guys that need to step up and be productive in that case. Fatim Dig has looked really good, Fidel's younger brother. So I don't feel like there's a Marlowe in that group, but I think that overall the linebackers are going to be okay. I hope that answers your question, JR.
I thought that was a position where they'd look heading into the spring. I'm 50-50 on it. It is still a place where they could,
they can't get back.
It's a place where they could use a guy. It's a place where they could use a guy.
James Hurd is back there. Do some younger players we're not thinking of step up there? Am I forgetting a name here? I'm just going through the names here so I don't forget somebody.
Zion Moultrie-Goddard.
I think he's got a chance to step up. But so to answer your question, JR, if there's somebody in the portal that you can get and you think can help the depth of that unit, go for it. But do I think it's screaming for a portal addition at this point? No, I think they're going to be okay. Where I think they might have to add somebody in the portal, and we can get into this more as spring practice goes along. I'm starting to wonder about that defensive line a little bit. That's the unit I think has some questions to answer. So
they do have that coming. They do have Chris Reese coming.
That is correct. That is correct. All right, Chris. Well, here we are, 42 minutes in. Appreciate you guys hanging with us here this long. And just a reminder that you can subscribe on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube in case you can't check us out live Thursday afternoons here on Syracuse Sports. Our Syracuse Sports Insiders have direct text message access to us. It's right there on your screen how you can sign up. We would love for you to join our growing community of some of the more passionate Syracuse sports fans out there. Join subtext.com/Syracuse Sports or just text the word orange to 315-847-3895. Looking forward to hearing Memorial Day Chris's thoughts on lacrosse after Saturday, and we'll have more for you guys out of spring practice. Syracuse quarterbacks coach Nunzio Campanelli is going to talk to us Friday, so we'll get his thoughts on the quarterback race going on. And, of course, we'll follow all the goings-on in the portal as Syracuse basketball tries to track down a point guard here. So we'll talk about all that on our next edition of Syracuse Sports. For now, for Chris Carlson, I'm Brent Dax. Thanks for hanging with us, guys. You guys have a great weekend, and we will talk to you again soon.